Trust you with the speech. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Besides saving the stand.
It's coming.
Okay.
So apply up to 90.
Okay, so we're on page 433. We're doing the last third part of the mimer. And the third part of the mimer goes into explaining after one succeeds in finding that godly spark through tshuva, through the process of arousing compassion, that's not enough because it could easily sort of fade away. You could lose it. And therefore, we need to do something to hold on to it. And what is it? Have to have a wick. Hashem is compared to fire. And just like fire without a wick doesn't really hold, so too, there has to be a keli. So I think we should start with page 42 at the bottom, the last paragraph there. As it's written, that Hashem is compared to fire. Naturally, if we compare Hashem to fire, it's not just one point. This is just one point is going to mention here, but there's a lot of reasons. I mean, fire is a source of light, fire is a source of energy. And in general, fire, and when we say compared to fire, there's more to it. Like, for example, Hashem is represented by fire. You know the story in Chumash when Moshe Rabbeinu was in the desert and Hashem appeared to him. How did he appear to him? He saw a bush and the bush was on fire and the bush wasn't being consumed. And then he realized this wasn't an ordinary physical fire. This was sort of the Shekhinah. This was Hashem's presence. So one of the reasons for this is because everything in the world is made up of four elements: earth, water, air, and fire. And of all the four elements, fire is the closest to, it's all Gashmis, but fire is the closest to the spiritual realm. Two things that we can just point out on the surface. Number one, fire doesn't really have any substance. Earth has substance. Water has substance. Even air has substance. And that's why air, a wind, for example, could push an object. Air could push a piece of paper, could push an object in the way because this pushes that. Fire, there's no substance to fire. To the extent that there's a halacha, you're not allowed to carry on Shabbos, right? From the private domain, Shus HaYachid, to the public domain. If you're transferring a flame of fire from the Shus HaYachid to the Shus HaRabim, it's not a malacha because there's no substance to it. Yeah, it doesn't mean you have to go and do it. It just means if you do it, it's not carrying.
Wait, what about the match, the candle, the killing?
What were you going to say?
Yeah,
Same question?
How do you transfer a flame without any?
Right. How do you transfer flame? I think if I remember correctly, the Gemara says, for example, if I'm standing by, let's say, the door, so I'm right by the end of my private domain, on the other side is the public domain. So if I take a candle, of course, it's carrying because the candle is carrying. If I take matches, the matches are carrying. if the fire is coming out of a hot coal, the hot coal is being carried. But what if I have the hot coal here and I do something on the other end? Let's say I put something out, a match or something, and the fire goes from here to there, but only the fire went.
So the match is in the.
You have a match or a candle here, or let's say a hot coal. And over here, I'm standing on the other end, and I put out a match or a candle or something which catches fire, and the fire will, because it's close enough, the fire will move over.
Oh.
But it's moving because of me from the private domain to the public domain, and yet it's only fire, nothing else.
Fascinating.
So the Gemara says, because fire has no substance, not considered carrying. I didn't carry anything. Number two, what we see in fire, which we see with nothing else in the world, which shows also how it's not as physical as everything else. You can draw from it and draw from it and draw from it endless, and it doesn't become less. Earth, if you take earth out of some place, there's less. You take water out of some place, there's less. You can even move air out of a certain place, and there's less. Fire, you can draw and light hundreds and thousands and millions of candles from one flame, and that original flame doesn't become less, which is not like the sort of the law of nature that applies to everything else that's physical. So B'chlal, fire is more closer to the spiritual realm. But then there's another thing, and that's explained in Tanya Perek Yutes, the famous chapter of Tanya, that Alter Rebbe says that the nature of fire is to go upward. Water goes downward. Earth goes downward. Air doesn't go down, but it doesn't go up. Heat always rises. The nature of fire is to go upward. And in that chapter in Tanya, Alter Rebbe goes into it in detail, is because fire is drawn to its source, which is another manifestation of something spiritual. Spirituality recognizes and senses and is very conscious of its source. As a result of its spirituality, anything spiritual is always being drawn to the source. So the difference between spirituality and things that are physical, in a certain way, they're going in two opposite directions. In the physical realm, the more physical something is, the more tangible it is, the more you can touch it and smell it and feel it, the more real it is. In the spiritual realm, it's just the opposite. Spiritual realm is drawn towards becoming more abstract. That, if you're talking about logic or feelings, the more there's energy there, the stronger it is, not the opposite. So basically, anything that's spiritual is drawn more to move away and become more abstract and closer to its source. And things that are physical move in the opposite direction. So the neshama is compared to fire. There's a famous pasuk, Ner Hashem Nishma Sodom. The candle of God is the soul of man. And that's why when you do something to commemorate a person that passed away, you light a candle, because the soul is constantly moving upward, wants to connect to its source. So in context of what it talks about in this Maimer, is the same thing. The love for Hashem and the godly spark in me is constantly wants to connect to its source. So even if I can hold on to it, unless I have a proper wick, I'm going to lose it. Because the nature of it is to be more elusive. It wants to go back to its source, closer to spirituality, not closer to the physical, concrete, tangible world. So I need to do something. It has to be a special effort to hold it down. And that's why it says in the pasuk, page 43, Kach achastiv, I held on to him, the one that I love, which is that nitzutz alaki. Lo yarpen, I won't let go, until I bring him to a place, and in that place, that'll be the way I can hold on to it. So that's the explanation of this part of the pasuk. This is also explained in the Zohar, our pasuk, Harei b'Shoshanim. He also finishes off with the words Harei b'Shoshanim. Harei means to pasture. Either could be used as a verb. It could also be used as a shepherd. But it says here, Harei b'Shoshanim, like a shepherd amongst roses. as if what's the shepherd feeding the sheep, feeding them roses. So we explained before, what is Shoshanim? Shoshanim means Shoshana halachas, that learning comes from the word learning Torah. And that's what the word Mishnah means. Mishnah means the source of the oral Torah is called Mishnah because Mishnah means to study. And where does the word shepherd come into the picture? Roya. And that's why it says shepherd. This is a quote from Gemara or Medrash, no, actually from the Zohar. It's a quote from the Zohar where it says that Yidden, they sustain their Father in heaven, as if we're feeding, so to speak, Hashem. What does that mean? The truth is, even before you look in the Zohar, if you look in the Chumash, what does it say when it comes to the korbanos, the sacrifices? Hashem says, this is my bread. So in a sense, that's the same thing, that when we bring a sacrifice, we're also feeding Hashem. What kind of expression is that, we're feeding Hashem? So the answer is, if you understand what the function of food is, the Gashmius, then we'll see that that's the same thing with Ruchnius. Let's do another few lines here, we'll soon see. Because through learning Torah, Torah is Hashem's will. Torah is the embodiment of Hashem's will and Hashem's spirit. So Ruach, I see Ruach. As we know, spirit from below brings a spirit from above. Amshich Ruach, and draws down that spirit. So by us learning Torah, which is really Hashem, we're drawing down godliness. That Hashem's inner will should be revealed by learning Torah. And that's compared to food. Just like through eating, this connects the neshama to the body. She's pashta by keichas neshmase b'har chavam, that all the faculties of the soul should be expressed in the body in its full sense. Kach k'vayachol, in the same way, Yisrael mepanasim l'avin shebashamayim. You didn't feed Hashem. What he's saying is this: the Maimar that explain what is the difference between food and medicine. Food strengthens a person, and medicine strengthens a person. The difference is medicine usually strengthens something specific in the body, whether it's the heart or the brain or the eyes or the ears, a certain organ of the body, certain place in the body that's lacking, that's weak, and you give medicine, and the reason is because there's some sort of damage there, something structural that's not right, and therefore I take a certain medication or we do a medical procedure to correct it. Food is different. Food is something which if a person doesn't eat, the entire body, the entire person becomes weak. Why? Because the function of food is not to correct damage. The function of food is to connect the soul with the body. To use a simple mashal is if this room would be not the lights that we have up here, but we'd have a lamp. And the lamp lights up the whole room. And it's bright. If I take that lamp and I move it out of the room to the hallway, what's going to happen? Will it be pitch dark in the room? No, what? It'll be, right, put in the hallway. It'll be not as bright as it was before, but it won't be pitch dark. And what if I move it 10 yards away? It's less. 20 yards away, there's a certain point, if I use it so far away, it'll be black as if nothing's going on. So when it was in the room, everything was lit up. When it moves away, the neshama is in the body and gives life to the body. If a person doesn't eat, what happens is the neshama moves a little bit out, a little bit away from the body. It doesn't shine the same way in the body because the food is what connects it. If 2 days go by, the person Chas v'Shalom doesn't eat, then it moves further away. And that's why the person that's feeling weaker and weaker. If God forbid, too much time goes by that there's no eating, then the neshama is so far away that it doesn't give any life to the body at all. So therefore, the way to define food is that it connects the neshama to the body. So on the larger scale, which is Hashem is the neshama, the world, the whole world is the body, and what we do connects Hashem to the world.
Could you say that one more time?
One more time.
Like, an analogy for Hashem. So, what is the food?
In other words, the world, the universe in general is a body,
Is body.
the body on a larger scale. Hashem is the neshama that gives life to this body, to the world. That's because Hashem is in the world. When we bring karbanos or other things that we do, like learning Torah, this is like food that connects Hashem to the world. If I don't, then the presence of Hashem moves away, like you mentioned yesterday with the Basar Legani. It moves away, and it moves away. And the more it moves away, the weaker the world becomes, the less godliness there is in the world. So that's why we talk about learning Torah, and we use a term like a shepherd that's feeding the sheep. Because when we learn Torah, it's like giving food, so to speak, to Hashem, that his presence and the world are connected.
With the actual karbanos.
Yeah, and that's what happens through Kabbalah in general, and specifically Torah and mitzvahs. There's a famous story with the Baal Shem Tov. There's a line there in Yiddish, I'm not trying to translate it, but it's that line that really makes the whole difference. But the Baal Shem Tov was very much into and sort of taught this to the point that now this became the most common thing that people practice, is that at everything that goes on, you say, Baruch Hashem. Thank you, Hashem. And the Hashem Tov would teach this to everyone who we met, to always say, thank you, Hashem, Baruch Hashem. So one time, he came to a place where there was someone who was a very big Torah scholar, and he was what they called in those days a parush. In the olden days, there were people who lived a life, I guess in English, the best word for it is like a hermit. But it was in the Torah way, which means they separated themselves from the community. They sat in the shul day and night. They only went home for Shabbos. And they did nothing else except for learning and davening. Didn't get involved in anything communal. This was their whole life. They just invested themselves in Torah and in prayer. And this is their way of dealing with all the temptations of this world. Some of them to the extent that when they did go home, they would go home blindfolded, so they shouldn't see anything that would be disturbing and spiritually disturbing. And therefore, when they got home, they took off the blindfold, they went back, they put it back on. They basically lived a life separating themselves from this world. They surely had no knowledge of Chassidus and all that. But Shem Tov, one time, when he was traveling incognito, like he looked like a regular poor beggar, he came to one of these people and he said, so how are you? He wanted him to say Baruch Hashem. So how are you? He didn't even answer. Just learning. So he goes, so how are you? Finally, he goes like that, didn't talk. Just with his hands, he waves him away, like, get away, like a fly. Stop bothering me. And then he says, if you don't say Baruch Hashem, Chas v'Shalom, you can make Hashem leave this world. In Yiddish, the expression to leave this world is just like the expression that someone God forbid dies. So the guy was like jolted. How do you talk like that? Once he got his attention, he started to explain him what it means. And the Baal Shem Tov explained that in davening, we say a pasuk in the Volatzin, Va'ata Kadosh, Hashem, you are holy, you are holy. Yeshev, you sit, Tehillas Yisrael, to hear the praises of the Jewish people. So he explained it this way, Hashem, you're holy. Holy means you're exalted, you're removed, you're up there. Yeshev, how do we bring you to sit down, to come down to this world? Tehillas Yisrael, when Jewish people praise Hashem and say, Baruch Hashem, thank you Hashem, and all these words, we bring Hashem down. So he used that expression as if we don't do that, make Hashem leave this world. Because that's really what happens. The Shekhinah is not revealed in the world. So these are different things that do it. In this Maimer is talking specifically about Torah. That Torah is doing the same thing like a shepherd. We're feeding this presence of Hashem that is connected to the world. So just like a person, when he eats, this connects the soul and the body, that all the faculties, which means when a person eats, it's not strengthening a specific area. Everything is stronger. The brain is functioning better, the heart is functioning better, the eyes, the ears, the mouth, the physical ability to walk, to do things, everything is stronger. That's how we, metaphorically speaking, we shepherd and nurture Hashem. Through Torah and through mitzvahs, this is Hashem's will. That through Torah, Hashem's presence is rests and is revealed. Hashem is shining to us, which means even if I don't learn Torah, Hashem is still here. If He wouldn't be here, the world couldn't exist, even for a second. So what we're talking about is Hashem should be in a revealed way. His inner desire should be shining in the world. Torah is Hashem's inner desire. And when we learn Torah, that brings that down. Through the letters and the words of Torah. Then he says there's another wick, another vessel that holds down Hashem's presence. And that is tzedakah. Gama, the mitzvahs of tzedakah. Through tzedakah. Shehu midas hachesed. This is the attribute of kindness. This is also a vessel, an external vessel that contains this light of Hashem, this light of love, and which is Hashem's inner dimension. So basically, both Torah and mitzvahs. Sometimes when it says tzedakah, even though tzedakah literally means giving charity in one way or another, but in a broader definition, it means all acts of mitzvahs. So both through Torah study, through acts of mitzvahs, we create a vessel and a wick to hold Hashem's light. And this is what it means. We say this every day in davening. With the light of your face, Nosata Lana, you gave us, Torah's Chayim, Torah of life, and Abbas Chesed, and love for kindness. Peter just means, La'er Pnei Hashem, in order to hold on to the light of Hashem's face, which means the inner light of Hashem, there are two vessels. One vessel is Torah, and one vessel is kindness. In the olden days, when I taught this class, and it's still left here in the booklet, we used to go over another thing, which is, it's really very inspiring when you're davening and you see something that you learned in the Maimer, and now the words have a different meaning to you. Like these words are in Shmon Esrei. And some of you say it once a day, twice a day, and some 3 times a day. And we say the words, Hashem with your light, shine your face. But here it's a deeper meaning, that through Torah study and through tzedakah. So we used to go through the Maimer and make a list of all the places in the Maimer that they quote parts of davening. But I found that it just takes too long to end the Maimer by going through all those pages. So, but this is one of them. Okay, so with this, we finish third part of the Maimer. Let's do the Kitzur, the summary, which is next page 46. So the summary is, after we explained everything, I think that Hebrew word might be a mistake here. Let me see what's the, I think it should be tzarech, the Havin. Oh, I don't have it in my copy. Okay. Anyway, it means that now we have to understand what does it mean when it says, I held on to him and I'm not letting go. And he explains it. That after a person finally succeeds, that the love for Hashem comes out in the open, so is a chassid, I hold on to it. I have to bring him to the house of my mother. That's by studying the written Torah. The Cheder Hirasi, the chamber which I was conceived, that's the Torah Shabbat, the oral Torah. And by doing that, I'm holding on to this love. And that's what it means, pasturing in roses. Why roses? Because Shoshanim, the word that means roses, also means halachas. Yisrael Mefanasim. By the way, is there any connection between learning? The same word means roses and means learning halacha, but the two things have no connection. They just happen to be hinted into the same word, or is there a connection? Very good. Right. How many parts are there to a rose? What?
3, 4, 6.
Keep counting.
4, 5.
How many what?
How many pieces are there to a rose?
Like petals?
Petals.
Stem,
24.
petals, thorns, and the flower.
Huh?
24.
Yeah. It says in the Zohar that there are 13 petals to a rose.
Oh,
13. Which means if you have a rose that has less or a rose that has more, it's a defective rose. It's supposed to have 13. So make sure before you buy it, it has all 13. I'm just joking. So in fact, the Zohar says that's one of the reasons why in Torah there's so much sort of references to roses, because the Torah, it says there are 13 methods of how we derive things from the written Torah to the oral Torah, which means that the basis for learning Torah and understanding Torah and knowing all the laws are 13 paths, which are the 13 methods that we use. So there's actually a connection between roses, meaning learning, which is based on 13, and there's also a connection to roses, meaning which is roses begashmias and the learning, and also connected to what we learned before, that it means the 13 attributes of mercy, because that's also the number 13. So it's obviously all connected.
That's from written to oral.
What, the 13? Right. These are 13 methods through which the sages, the Moshe Rabbeinu gave over to the sages. Through these 13 methods, things can be derived from the written Torah to the oral Torah.
Were there 13 petals to the rose or 13 pieces of petals?
Petals, yeah. And there are two vessels. One vessel is Torah, the other vessel is Chesed. Okay, let's do the review. That's page in the booklet here, in the sheets that I gave you. That's page 14. So from this Maimon, we would ask a question: how is godliness like fire? So again, in many Maimorim, you'll find a lot of different explanations, but in this Maimon, it means it's like fire, that just like fire without a wick won't hold, it'll fade away. So too, the Spirit of God, like we see, for example, with ourselves, that sometimes a person gets inspired. And really, if I don't make an effort to do something to retain that inspiration, it can easily fade away. How do you retain it? Also the same thing, through learning, davening, through doing certain things that are an expression of that love for Hashem. What are the two kelim? What are the two vessels or the two wicks that hold down the light of Hashem? We just said Torah and mitzvahs, Torah and chesed. And what is the main point of this ois? Main point is the idea of holding on to it. So look at page 54. That's just a summary of the whole mimer, just to get a picture of it. It's very hard to remember every line and every word, but a summary of the whole mimer you could sort of try to retain, not let it fade away. So this is the summary. Next page. Is that, I know it says 54 here because it's probably a copy from the original book, but it's right next to it. You don't have it in this book? Oh, over here, it's probably the last page here. It's the very last page. All the way at the end. Yeah. So the first chapter, the second chapter, and the third. The first is that throughout the entire month of Elul, Yud Gimel Midas Rachman shine. The difference between Yud Gimel Midas Rachman that shine in Elul versus the 13 Midas Rachman that shine Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur is explained with the mashal of the king in the field. That's number one. Number two, how can one be a keli, a vessel to absorb the light? By dedicating one's pnimius to Hashem. This light is Hashem's inner will. So if I dedicate myself on a deeper inner level, I give myself to Hashem, not just superficially, but it's really from the inside, then I'll be a vessel to get Hashem's inner will. What empowers a person to dedicate their pnimius is the nitzitz elokii, the godly spark, which is the aspect of the name Kael that is within us. So what empowers me, what gives me the strength, what motivates me to have that inner will is the nitzitz elokii. And we all have it, no exceptions. Number two, the difference between a city, field, and a desert spiritually, that's one thing that he explains. And then he goes into, how do I find the lost nitzitz elokii? One must search in the place where it got lost, which is the negative thought, speech, and action. And of course, he gives the three methods of what we need to do to find the nitzitz elokii. And the third chapter is after one succeeds and finds this love, one must still create a vessel to retain the love. Otherwise, it would fade away. The two vessels are Torah and Tzedakah. Got it? Okay. Now what? Now that we accomplished all this, we're going to sit back and relax and just enjoy. So I'm not going to do the whole thing, but in this booklet, there's another maimer on Nili Dodi, and that's the maimer that the Rebbe said. And in that maimer, the Rebbe gives commentary and explains various things in this maimer. There's two parts of the Rebbe's maimer that I want to go over and point out, because it's really fascinating and explains things in a more clear way. One of the things I mentioned before, the other thing we didn't talk about before. If you can turn to page 65, we'll do the first part. Page 65. I brought up the question, and the question was, here we say the king is in the field, and this is only Elul. No other time of the year is Hashem so successful in the field and all that. And yet we say Elul is a time where Hashem doesn't take the initiative, it all comes from me. And why isn't that a contradiction? Hashem is taking the initiative, he's coming out to the field and to greet us, and that we can greet him in a way like he has never, ever done, not Cheshvan, not Kislev, not Tishrei, no other month of the year, only Elul. So how is it not a contradiction? I gave you the answer, but this is where it's from. We'll do this inside. How is it not a contradiction? That on one hand we say Elul is all about I have to take the initiative. It's not coming through Hashem's initiative. And yet the whole idea is that the Yud Gimel Rachim are shining. Hashem is like the king in the field, which means he is taking initiative. So it's maybe the opposite of what the whole Maimer is talking about. And yet the whole Maimer talks so much about how the 13 attributes of mercy shine only in this month. And then to say, and this month, everything has to come only from me. Right. How is it not a contradiction?
Doesn't he make a vessel?
What?
Doesn't he make a vessel?
I have to make a vessel, but still, it means it's coming from a source of the Leila. Hashem is starting. He's shining his Yud Gimel Midas Rachman. Why isn't that considered a source of the Leila? That's the question.
Because you can't get that source of Rachman without approaching him. Like if he's there.
No, he comes first.
We make him a king this time.
That's on Rosh Hashanah, right? But in Elul, Hashem shines in 13 Midas Harachamim, and that means like the king who's in the field, and we can approach him. So it means that he's doing something in Elul, regardless of what I'm doing, he's doing something, and that is what gets the whole thing started. So really, he's starting it, not we. When we say Yisusul Tata means nothing's happening, it's quiet, there's no miracles, there's no godly revelations, it's an ordinary day, and I just on my own motivate myself and I generate feelings of love for Hashem. But here Hashem is doing something to make all this happen by shining Yud Gimel Rachel. So it seems to be a contradiction.
Is there ever such thing as a genuine Isra Stila Sata? Like, how is that even possible?
You're right, because even Susul Tata comes from him. How can I do anything from him? But normally it means that Hashem is hidden. That's what it means. Whatever he does for me, he does in a hidden way, not in a revealed way. But here we're saying the 13 attributes are being revealed. And that means the source of the Leila. So Mamshid by Maimer, and the Kuduterra continues stating that El is a time where the 13 attributes of mercy are revealed. Now he goes like this. Here's with the question. Even though the divine service El is characterized by the word Anil Daidi, which means Tata, that it comes from me. Tata Shaladam, the Tata of a person, especially a person who is distant from Hashem, it's evoked by an arousal and it's something that's generated from above. And these 13 midas harachman is to everyone. The chol echad ve'echad misrael. Gam archaikim beis, even the people that are the most distant from Hashem, totally unaware. Yud Gimel midas harachman is shining upon them also. Page 66. So this Yud Gimel harachman is nesinas koyach. It generates potential from above that enables the service of Anila Daidi. Ella, however, the gili of Elul is rainy as an sinas kayach. These are the words, and then we'll explain that what's revealed in Elul, it enables us to serve Hashem, but it doesn't actually inspire us to serve Hashem. I think I gave you the example last time of if I want to go from here to New Jersey, there's two possibilities. And one possibility is someone says, I'm going, you can hop into my car. So they're taking me there. The other possibility, the person says, yeah, you can take my car. What's the difference? In this case, someone is taking me there. In the second case, someone is enabling me that I can drive there. But I'm going to have to do the driving myself. But still, this one is enabling me. But it's a big difference, whether they're carrying me or they're giving me a sort of, they're enabling me that I should be able to do it. What he's saying in the Maimer is, there are times where Hashem actually inspires us. Not only opportunity, he actually is the one, that inspiration that I feel is coming from above, like a wind that carries a piece of paper. I feel inspired because something from above is inspiring me. Elul is not, Hashem is not inspiring me. Hashem is enabling me to do things in this month and accomplish things that I normally can't. But he's not, he's going to give an explanation. How is that? How do we draw that line? The service itself has to come from the person. So let's see if we can chaparang and say the next few lines. Here's where he explains it. This is the Maila, this is the advantage of Elul over the 10 days of Tshuva. Aseres Yemei Tshuva, the 10 days of Tshuva, which starts on Rosh Hashanah and concludes on Yom Kippur, and especially the 2 days that stand out in these 10 days, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, it's a gilu, something is being revealed from Hashem that's so powerful, Shagili Ma'eris Adam, what's revealed from Hashem, that actually inspires us. And therefore, when I serve Hashem, when davening and learning, and I'm inspired, I'm doing tshuva, and I'm feeling love for Him, it's really a result of Hashem's inspiration more than what I'm doing. It's Hashem's inspiration that's flowing through me. The Iker in the Mila Daveda Sudden, but where do we see mainly this advantage of a person doing the Aveda with his own initiative? That's an Elul, not in the 10 days of Tshuva. I mean, what the Rebbe is saying is, this is similar to a story with the Alter Rebbe. We know that, and I explained it, that this is one of the big differences between the Alter Rebbe and all the other Hasidic Rebbes of the Maggid. They believe that Hasidim should not be studying Chassidus on their own. It's too much. A little bit, not a lot, a little bit. And a lot of them were very against the Alter Rebbe that revealed Chassidus in buckets. And he wanted every chassid to learn and to understand it in depth and meditate, and the meditation should generate love for Hashem. The Alter Rebbe's opinion was no. So how did those chassidim get their inspiration if they didn't study Chassidus? The answer is through being connected to their Rebbe. That's what they believe. It's through connection. The Alter Rebbe said, yes, you have to be connected, but that's not enough. We have to do whatever it takes for me, myself, to generate that love. And the only way that can happen is by learning, understanding, and the knowledge generates the emotion. So one time, one of the students of the Maggid Mezrich, his name was Reb Chaikel Hamadura. He was one of the students, and he had 3,000 Chassidim, lived all in Russia. And he was a great tzaddik, and his Chassidim were all very connected to him. When he davened, and he was on fire and davening, all the Chassidim, wherever they were davening, and they were all in flames from their davening. So one time, a Chassid was in a shul together with the Alter Rebbe, and he saw one of his Chassidim davening. And when you looked at him, you literally saw the person is on fire, not just davening. He's on fire. And he said to Alter Rebbe, cooked brennt. In Yiddish, it means, Rebbe, he's on fire, look. The Alter Rebbe said, he's not on fire. Reb Chaikel is on fire. He's reflecting his Rebbe's fire because it's not his own fire. He's so connected. It's like, imagine if you see a fire in a mirror. What would you say? The mirror is on fire? No, the fire is over here. The mirror reflects that fire. Again, this is on a finer level, but when the fire for Hashem comes from above, then it's not really me, it's not really mine. It's a fire coming from a higher place. So Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, there's so much godliness revealed that if I'm a little bit sensitive, I'll be carried away by that gili, by that light of Hashem. Elul is different. Elul, Hashem is just enabling us, but we have to create that initiative on our own. And he's going to explain soon how it fits into the mashal of the king in the palace or the king in the field, where one of them you see he's only enabling, and the other one is actually inspiring. But for that, we'll have to wait for next year. Sorry to keep you waiting so long. Okay, so we're going to have a class this afternoon, Mirza Hashem, before the last class of the year. All the time we have to make booklets at Tzemach Tzedek. Oh, you've been up ready? Okay. You're ahead of the game.